services. That's one of the number one, things to worry about in business. If you're not getting your cash flow and that's not working right, and you can see that if this continues for a set period of time with that drop in sales in your product, whatever it might be, you're going to be in trouble. So you've got to think about how else that's going to work. Do you ask for an overdraft from your financial services provider? Start to think about that very quickly up front. Also, sales figures, things like that. Sales figures by your channel. If you're online, that's going to be much less affected by if you're in a retail outlet at the moment. All of those are closed. Do you need to pivot? Do you need to think about something else? How are these going to be affected going forward? So thinking about that with your current situation, with partial lockdown lifted, with just partial lockdown, or with it completely lifted. Think about the time frames and how that's affected your sales figures, and try and think about projecting the potential impact going forward. The key thing as well for you would be your critical hires list. So understand who those key people are in your business. It's something that every company should understand and every company should know about, but they don't necessarily do it. It's one of those, it's on my to-do list. So for example, if you have somebody who is currently off because they have COVID, somebody who might be off because they have COVID, somebody who has medical needs, or they were waiting for an operation, or they have cancer, all of this treatment has been delayed for the moment. Everything is COVID-centric. The NHS is going to have waiting lists, they've said now, for up to 3 years to try and bring it back to where it should be. So think about what would happen if your key people are absent and can't do their job. Is there somebody else who can stand in? Is there somebody else who could take on part of their roles? What are the really critical things that you need to think about for filling that gap if they're suddenly not there, or if the worst happens, if they don't come back? It's not a nice thing to have to think about, but it's something that's very real at the moment. Another area that I'd look at is business continuity in your crisis management. Pull out the plan, have a really good look at it. Do you have most of what you need in there? You're not going to have everything. It's thinking about that and thinking about pivoting it and changing it to the current scenario. The last thing I'd look at is the innovation agenda. This is something that Gunnar can talk through in a little while, and that's around what did we have planned? What was on the horizon? What were we looking at doing for transformation? Potentially, were we looking at doing things like 5G, RPA, self-healing networks to reduce the amount of people that we actually needed? That automation is something that people had on their to-do list. Well, is that something that you now have to bring forward in order to allow your business to continue to function? These are the key inputs that I would have. There's lots of additional things on there. Like on the slides here, we can see that the employees, you may have some mental health issues. So your productivity is also going to be, we continue to have people working from home, and can your business survive on that model, or is it something that the productivity levels aren't high enough in order to continue? We've got to think about that. Thinking about office changes and how do we then function if the government states that we can't have people on transport? They're talking about potentially social distancing. That's going to be perhaps 12% of the train. You've still got to get your people to work. You've still got to get people to do their jobs, even if the children don't go to school on a full-time basis. So there's lots of these things that we need to think about. And Sam has kindly labelled this the fourth strategic layer for me. Normally you would have your short-term, medium-term and long-term. I use a fourth when I go into companies which are broken, struggling, really in need of some sort of immediate help. An SP layer, which is a sticking plaster. It's what can we immediately do, a very quick win, something over the top of that, which is going to get
Tracy,
you to the next stage.
Tracy, just very quickly, I think someone is not on mute and we can hear quite a little bit of feedback. I'm not sure. Could everyone who's not, just for now, just mute yourself for now. And then when we come to the question and answers, we'll let everyone answer. But I can hear some feedback or some muffling noise. Sorry about that.
Okay, no, that's fine. Can you hear me now?
I think Honor, let me just bear with me.
You should be able to mute people.
Yeah,
I guess.
I've got it. I've done it. Right, that's better. Okay, Tracy, You can
Okay.
continue. Apologies.
That's okay. So I was just talking about this fourth strategic layer. So for me, this is a sticking plaster. This is what do we need to immediately do in the very, very short term within up to a 4-week period to try and get your business over this next stage. It would be then looking at all of those inputs that you have and building a one-pager. And I don't write email documents for clients. I never have. What I do though is I will get a one-page Excel spreadsheet with these 4 pillars that are on there with people, process, customer, and technology. And we then have the sticking plaster. We have the short term, the medium term, and the long term. And all of that is pulled together from the strategy, from all of those key documents to see whether we have to shuffle, whether we have to do something new, and then to give something which is a very, very high level plan to the board once we understand what the problems are. And at that point, we would have the technical side come in. These are our problems. How are we planning to meet these technically? Because in most cases, you are going to have some sort of a technical solution in order to do it. You can change, you can change your processes, you can change different things, but inevitably, the majority of your solutions that you're going to come out with are going to have a technical bias to then helping you to deliver those. So my spreadsheet that I use, I've not got it to show you today, but I'm happy to talk to anybody afterwards. This is something I've used over 20 years and refined. I look at the area, I look at how it's been impacted. Will it be impacted? When will it be impacted? What is the impact type? Is it mild, moderate, severe? The levels that are split down is into the people, the process, the technology, and the customer. So I understand from all of those areas, you have a critical path with projects, but you will also have critical processes and critical business areas. It's making sure that you understand what those are, they're marked down, and they're given a priority in that spreadsheet. We've then got, what is the problem? You know, a sticking plaster. Do we need a sticking plaster short term? Do we need a medium term solution, a longer term solution? And at that point, we start to then say, on a very high level, because we are looking at very quick wins here, what can we do technically to make that happen? There's lots of options of how you can do things. If we need less people to run a process, do we look at RPA? Do we look at something else? What can we do? Who do we talk to? And that initial spreadsheet tells us how we do that. We start to look at potential suppliers or people that we can bring in as contractors to help us. I also have a capability column, which is the company physically capable of doing this right now? If it's not, that's another discussion that you have with the board. What do we need to do to make us capable in order for that to happen? And once we've got all of that, we understand, is this a brand new solution? Is this in the strategy, but we're just shuffling it? Or is this something that has to be changed completely and something brought in new? If it is, we have to understand how we're going to do it. All of this is a one-page Excel spreadsheet. I don't believe that spending days and days writing Word documents and then taking them to the board is the way to go in this scenario. For us, it's about, these are the business issues, these are how critical they are, this is what we have to do to keep going, and then we look at the technical side, which Gunnar will sort of start to talk through now about what they have, how things are, what they can actually deliver, and plugging those in so the two areas should dovetail. It should be a very, very quick initial discussion from my side about how this all works and getting that to the board to enable them to make the best informed decisions. So from that point then, you can start to build out a plan as to how you're going to roll this out and how you're going to make it work. So
Thank you for that, Tracy. Really, really appreciate that. That was some really, really good information there, very detailed. And I think Tracy's going to put together a document that we will be able to share with attendees only, which is kind of almost like a cheat sheet of all of these things that you need to consider. So, Tracy, thank you for that. I'm now going to hand you over to Gunnar Menzel. Gunnar is the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer at CapGemini. He's also a Certified Master Architect for CapGemini. He is the lead author of CapGemini's Technovision Trend Series. And he is a big deal. Gunnar, thank you for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. About 20 minutes ago, Gunnar gave me his slides, and I was immediately kind of trying to put them into our presentation and keep the same look and feel. So we've tried to do that, Gunnar. Gunnar, thank you for joining us. We're going to now talk about some of the things that that CapGemini are kind of doing, and it's going to be some really broad brushstrokes, isn't it, Gunnar?
So first of all, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you
Okay,
fine.
because I have to apologize. I sit in the garden in Sale in Manchester, and my neighbor just started to cut the lawn, so it might be a bit loud. So that's why I switched over. Contingency. I always have contingencies, not Tracy. So I switched over to my headset to make sure that I don't pick up too many noises. So yeah, I'm the CTIO for Europe. A bit of context for CapGemini, if you don't know. CapGemini, 270,000 people strong globally. We are the biggest European-based technology company in Europe, based out of France. When you mentioned India, quite interesting. We have 120,000 people in India, and most or majority of our staff are working now from home. And fortunately, we've been quite lucky because all of our staff have laptops, versus some of our competitors have struggled because some of their staff in India don't have laptops. Anyway, I have 3 slides, as Sam mentioned. I just wanted to give you a quick view of what we see, what I see in Europe, what we hear from our customers, what are kind of the key demand profiles that we can see from a technology perspective. Secondly, maybe give you a bit of, and I'm not going to go into the details, but I'll share the links with you, some research material that I found particularly interesting in the context of technology in COVID-19. And then a view across the technology landscape, so to say. So what are kind of the key technologies that we see, that I see across Europe are, I guess, most relevant or prevalent today? Again, some of them were already mentioned, but I wanted to spend a couple of minutes maybe detailing them a bit further. Whole purpose is really kind of just share some ideas and some views, and I'd like to say thanks to Sam for organizing this roundtable, which I think is invaluable. Particularly connecting nowadays is something that's really important for all of us. Short-term focus. So what are kind of the key things, or the things we're seeing, we're hearing from our customers? As you can imagine, in Europe, we have 110,000 people in Europe. We have hundreds of accounts and clients in Europe. Large ones and very large ones, but also smaller and SME likes. And there are 5 key things that we're hearing from our customers. If you stay on the short one for a second. So 5 things we hear. First, obviously, is connectivity. So it's to support, connecting the workforce back to the office. It's also enabling the workforce to engage. We've just experienced Zoom, or there are other technologies available like Teams or Skype. It can be quite a challenge to really be effective when working remotely, particularly when you work or when you come from a sector that is not used to working remotely from home. The second we hear a lot from customers is cost savings. So yes, business continuity is important, but also save cost, because maybe staff has been furloughed, maybe the business has been mothballed, or is running on business as usual only. Cost savings is a big question we are getting right now. That's kind of a key focus for our customers. The third is more relevant, I guess, in public sector, but also in private sector. We see more and more new solutions appearing. So obviously, I mean, you see in the UK, new systems being implemented in HMRC. So the furlough system, for instance, where we're quite heavily involved with, as well as other systems in public sector. But also some private companies are coming to us for new solutions that weren't required before, because COVID-19 are creating new requirements. And then, of course, when you look globally, the question, or the demand around COVID-19 response. So what can I do to prevent, to contain, or to suppress COVID-19? Again, a significant amount of IT solutions that can help with the prevention, the containment, and the suppression of COVID-19. And last but not least, and I think that's obviously the focus and the target for the next 3 weeks here, is get me ready for after COVID-19. We're hearing, hopefully, our Prime Minister will tell us something on Sunday. If you look at Germany, for instance, which is great news, the beer gardens are opening in Germany even before the kindergartens. As well as next Friday is the first day of the Bundesliga. So so you see a lot of clients or customers are starting now to get ready for what comes after COVID-19. And this is, I guess, also the focus for our conversation and indeed the focus for the next 2 slides. So if you go on to the next one. So as you can imagine, CapGemini, we have a very significant market research team called our Research Institute. Again, I'll share these materials if you're interested. They're hyperlinked as well. We issued over the last 5 weeks or 4 weeks a number of sector-specific research material, so COVID-19 related research material, where we ask the question, what is happening in retail, what's happening in automobile, what's happening in financial sector, what's the impact on supply chain. And out of these research materials, you see, and this is kind of my key focus, again, from a technology perspective, you see quite a number of similarities and quite a number of commonalities in terms of technology. For instance, I think numbers that we've seen, automation per se, so automation could be infrastructure automation or business process automation. There's an increase of over 150 to 200% over the past 3 months. So we're getting double the amount of requests for helping customers to automate. Again, it could be business automation or technology automation. We also see significant demand in terms of clouds, cloud capabilities, digital transformation, as well as, of course, as you can imagine, there is a significant amount of demand around collaboration. So help us to enable, equip our staff to connect better and to collaborate better. And all these, I guess, demand profiles from a technology perspective stem, of course, of what comes from the customer requirement. Hey, Paul, nice to see you too. Interesting to see some older faces. So I always, so currently as CTIO was really important to me. What seems to be important for all of our customers is really get our heads around what it all means. And of course, nobody has the answer. Nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody can tell us what will happen in July and August. All we can do, of course, is prepare. And preparation is nothing better than preparation than look at what information is available. And this is one extract, of course, CapGemini's Research Institute. If you look at, just before I go on to the next slide, Gartner, Forrester, IDC, HST, Everest, all similar, issuing reports and material. I guess none of these give you answers, but they give you some indications. And I think the key really is to, a bit what was discussed before, is to see, okay, how does this affect me in my context? And maybe that's when we go on to the next slide, because I was asked, okay, so what are, if you get to the core, what are kind of the key technologies that we currently see? And this is kind of really short term, really right now. What are kind of the enabling technologies that we see that helps our customers, helps us, also of course CapGemini, to really kind of survive and thrive, maybe even in COVID-19. And I thought I maybe use a couple of groupings here, so you see maybe some interesting titles, but Sam mentioned before, we have a framework called Technovision. Technovision is no more than a collection of 37 IT trends or technology trends that we see fueling the digital transformation. So if you wanted to do a transformation from a digital perspective, then we see 37 trends being applicable to you. And I've just picked out the most relevant trend that we see, that I see from a COVID-19 perspective. There are 3 key ones that seem to be overriding. And this coincides, by the way, not just with research from CapGemini, I checked it with others as well. There were 3 key technology trends that seems to be the most important for customers during COVID-19. There are clouds, AI, artificial intelligence, as well as automation. There are others as well. Like I mentioned, we have 37, but it seems like these are kind of the three key that most relevant. And when you go across the enterprise, and I try to kind of use again our containers in Technovision to help us to organize, or help me organize those technologies, you can clearly see some common themes. So in infrastructure, or in tech infrastructure, we call it invisible infrastructure, where we see infrastructure being abstracted. Obviously, better connection, more bandwidth is a key demand right now, but also the need for cloudification. Applications, as I mentioned, there is a significant amount of increase of requests around AI. AI, artificial intelligence, to help to thrive on data, so to drive and to support data analysis or data and reporting. And automation I mentioned before. So the demand from a technology perspective to help to automate environments or business processes or technologies, and I mentioned those before. And then there are two more very important trends, again from a technology perspective, and this is about the customer experience or the end user experience and the collaboration. My father-in-law is 94. He'd never used technology before, and he didn't know what Team or Zoom or BlueJean is. He's now on Teams, on Facebook, and FaceTime constantly. Same as my mother-in-law. I'm not going to tell you how old she is. She wouldn't like me to tell you, but they're starting really, or they're all kind of connected with technology, which we never achieved before in the IT industry. Now, everybody has to, because you want to stay connected. So collaboration tools, as well as the tools that help you to increase experience, significant support as well, like chatbots, for instance. If you look at NHS, you can imagine the amount of call increase NHS had with COVID-19. We helped in certain areas as well to drive or increase the use of chatbots, as well as, of course, we all use, we're currently using Zoom, we use Teams, we use BlueJeans, you may use other tools like Skype to be connected. So these are clearly kind of key technologies. As I mentioned, there are probably, there are others, of course. Like I said, there are 37, but we feel that these are kind of the key trends or key technologies that seem to be kind of helping customers right now. Last but not least, before I stop, obviously you have technologies that help you to transform, like cloud, like AI, like automation. But there also seems to be a new trend to seeing how do you apply these. We see, and this might break a bit technology, we see much more collaboration across not just the sector, but also competitors to really help within the market segment or the region. People are moving more closer together and really kind of want to help society and want to help the environment, which I think is a good thing. I mentioned before, cost savings is a key request. Goes without saying, I guess. And of course, in the context of COVID-19, you probably have seen as well, there's a significant increase on cybersecurity. So to prevent and detect and prevent security breaches, or there is an increase in phishing attempts as well. So there are technologies that are also helping to address these, and some companies are making some real strides in improving those capabilities. So 3 slides, obviously. So first one was about what I see across the industry, probably not dissimilar to what you all see as well, in terms of the requirements or the demands. The kind of the research material that I mentioned, very happy to of course we have more, but I thought that maybe the most relevant in the context of our conversation is also more material on LinkedIn. Again, the link is on the deck. And then just a quick 2 seconds toe dipping into the technology space, and really kind of keeping, cloud, AI, automation seems to be kind of the key trends, but not to say that there are others as well. Like I mentioned, the 37, which again sits within Technovision. If you're interested, of course, in Technovision, then you can freely access the material. It's there to be used, and I'm here also to answer questions, or you can connect with me later on LinkedIn or directly if you want to. And that was me. Thanks, Sam.
Gonna really, really appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed. I thought that you were talking about automation there, and then that kind of leads into robotics, process automation, I'm guessing, obviously. Do you still see that as a really new kind of industry? A lot of people, 4 or 5 years ago, wouldn't have even really considered that. What do you see the big changes within RPA then?
So automation is a wide term. So the automation clearly, in my context, has started, or clearly kind of started on the automation on the technology side. But automation, we see automation moving much further into the business side. So automation of business process activities that weren't even considered before to be automated. Interactions, you look at chatbots, for instance, or look at a good example, for instance, I don't know, last time you enabled your credit card, years ago, even a couple of years ago, when I used your new credit card, you called somebody, you had somebody on the back of the phone, and you would give them the number, they would ask you a question, and then it would enable them the credit card. Now it's all automated. You call the number, it's a chatbot, and within 5 seconds your card is automated. One example, of course, but there's more and more automation coming from a very technical. So we used Ansible or VMware, or we use Windows, or we use other technologies to automate certain technology processes. You see much more automation now on the business side, and even in areas where, like I mentioned, automation wasn't really considered, particularly on like manufacturing side or quality assurance activities. One more thing, particularly on manufacturing, is in the context of COVID-19. We're just working with a manufacturer that exactly does or will automate their entire quality management process within a site. So using CCTV, using cameras, using AI to do detection, and fully automate the entire quality management control system, which they hadn't before. It was something they felt was always human interaction required, but feeling more comfortable now that AI and robotics, RPA, are more sophisticated and can help to even identify things that a human person or human being couldn't identify.
That's really interesting, Gunnar. Thank you for that. Right, well, I'm going to thank you, Gunnar. Thank you, Tracy. I think that was really, really insightful, really interesting to me personally. I'm going to put out to the floor to the attendees now. If anybody would like to ask a question of either Gunnar or Tracy, please show your hand or unmute yourself. You should be able to do that, and please ask any questions that you've got. Nick?
Yeah, hi. It's probably one for Gunnar. Just for context, I was most recently, I spent 5 years on the C-suite of a big insurance company as their technology and change director. And I had accountability for business continuity, amongst other things. I should say I'm now on a spectacularly badly timed career break, so I can go travelling.
Okay.
But I'm just down the road from you in Altrincham at the moment.
Okay.
One of the things that I've seen a big trend over the last several years, and I think it's been cost reduction in reality, rebadged as employee flexibility, but the move to bring your own device. It's at the upper levels of organisations, kind of okay. It's quite controversial when you get lower down the pyramid because it's seen as a bit of a tax. Now, anecdotally, I'm hearing lots of organisations rapidly reverse how to bring your own device, and configuring laptops like they're going out of fashion again. I'm just wondering whether you're seeing that as a trend or a blip, or whether you have any considerations about what the physical enabling of employees is going to look like. Also, I work in more of a services industry. It's different if you're in manufacturing or retail or whatever.
Great question, Nick. So first of all, I think BYOD, bring your own device, it's been an idea, it's been around for at least 10 years or 12 years or even longer than that. And I remember when I was kind of really hip to talk about it, I was at the time, I was the CTO for the Environment Agency, and we had a program to implement. It was also coincided with the time when iPads came out. iPad 2 was the first usable iPad, and we deployed iPads as well as we enabled technology from a technology perspective to do a bring own device capability. And of course, the big concern we had at the time was security. It was, if somebody bring their own phone, will they, include, will they have viruses, or how do I protect the capability? And that has changed very quickly to saying, Jesus, it caused quite a lot of complexity, because you certainly have devices that you are not in control of anymore, particularly from an asset perspective. And how do you keep control and manage these? So these management platforms started to appear everywhere, and then you had to implement a new program or a new solution to manage those devices. Plus, you had a big problem, because you had to support certainly Android and iPhones, you had to support other technologies and your applications that you had. So when I was working at Direct Line, for instance, there's a whole raft of guidewire capabilities or other applications that you also have to deploy on these devices, and they're sometimes not compatible. So you ended up basically with having bring your own device plus your computer or your laptop that was issued from your company, because there were certain applications that are just very difficult to kind of deploy on handheld, and if you can deploy them, even more difficult to keep up with the latest version. So I think it's kind of strings and roundabouts. I think nowadays I see a lot of companies starting to say, or saying, look, we give you the capability to access the intranet, to access these applications. This is a standard issued laptop. You can take it. If you don't, you can use your own. But certain functionalities, certain features will only be enabled on your laptop. So when I go to other customers, so I was with another insurer in Italy just before the lockdown. Actually the second largest in Italy, and in Spain I think they are as well. And when you go around there, they all have company issued laptops. They also use their phones, and they can do almost as much as they can on the laptop. So full email functionality, internet access, certain access to certain information, but there are always certain capabilities, or seem to be, that you cannot access on your phone. So I think there's certainly kind of a revert back to using your laptops or using corporate IT.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nick, for your question. Would anybody else like to ask any questions of the panel?
Yes, I would, if you don't mind. Possibly something. Hi. Possibly something maybe a bit more towards Tracy than Gunnar. Just recently in Pets at Home, what we've seen was a huge spike in demand prior to the full lockdown, and then actually demand then fell. What we saw from a customer perspective in terms then was like a driver over onto the e-commerce side. And actually what we've seen is that customers have become a lot more accepting of slightly longer lead times, having to pay for deliveries, longer response times because of all of the influx. And I'm just wondering whether you've seen any evidence with the companies you've been working for of that with them. So actually this kind of longer acceptance, and whether you think this will be something that will be longer term with customers, that they will be more willing to pay for deliveries, that will be more accepting of not immediacy.
Yeah, I believe so. Because we're all in this together, this isn't a big secret. This is something that we're all immersed into. You don't have that general fight that you would with customers, where you're trying to change their terms and conditions, where you're changing your business model and they may not be as accepting of it. But now everybody understands that there is an impact. You don't have to do that change piece. You don't have to do that comms piece with your customers to make them understand. So for now, everybody is accepting that there are issues with supply chain. The BBC have done a wonderful job for you, so that you don't have to put that effort in order for your customers to be fully aware. And the shift to online is absolutely huge. I've been talking to 3 or 4 customers in the last week, and they've said that the spike in their products that are being bought online is absolutely huge. What they have done is they've made their terms and conditions very, very clear, with a COVID clause right the way up front to say, thank you very much for your interest or for your orders, but please be aware that our lead times have changed and may be subjected to change because of this. And the acceptance is absolutely there. So you know, if you're going down that route, you know, continue to do so, because that's where I would see your business growth continuing, whereas everything else is going to be stagnated for a while.
Yeah, that's exactly what we've been seeing, is kind of continued growth in that area. And obviously, whilst you can do a lot with IT, physically packing, physically getting goods in, the supply chain side, it's a lot harder to get that moving faster immediately.
It is.
I was talking to a retailer in Germany. I use Germany as an example because I'm German. Well, I've been living in Manchester for 20 years, and they were saying exactly the same thing. They were saying that there's much more tolerance now on the customer side. They understand exactly those problems or problematics from a supply chain perspective, and you know, whereas before, you know, you were quite maybe annoyed or frustrated if your delivery wasn't delivered at the time slot that you agreed or you accepted or expected. Now there's much more tolerance, and I think people are appreciative of organizations such like yours. I have a Labrador, and I'm actually popping down to Pets soon to get some stuff for her. And it's important, of course. It's a critical service, or for a lot of people, it's a critical service. So they're appreciative that they can get the products, even if it takes a day or two, or even a week longer.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Susie, for that. Really appreciate it. Has anybody else got any questions that they'd like to put to Tracy or Gunnar, or would anybody like to share some of their experience that they've had over the last sort of 6-7 weeks? Hi, Paul. How are you doing? You all right?
Very well. Paul from Manchester, also a foreigner to Manchester for 20 years, as I moved from London to Manchester for love.
You made a good choice, Paul.
Fantastic. Love living in Manchester and love the people. Tracy, I'm just interested in what business you have opened up online within the last 6 weeks.
That's an interesting one. Okay, I'm going to make you laugh because I did this with Sam earlier. I had a bit of a thought about this. Now, all of us are locked down for quite some time, and most of us have partners. So you're going to go one of 3 ways, really. You're either going to really love your partner if you're not already married and want to take that further. You're going to want to get divorced, so divorce lawyers are going to be extremely busy after this. Or you're really going to dislike your partner and you're going to do something and snap. So it's going to be one of those 3 ways. And I just thought there are lots of people out there with postponed weddings who are going to be forced into accelerating their relationships. So why not start a wedding business? And for me, I was talking to Sam about this. I went from concept to go live in 10 days. So please take a look. I'll give you the URL. It's vintageandrusticweddings.com. Take a look. And off the back of that, I also decided I would quite like a search engine. When I come out of this, it's going to be the same for everybody. We're going to want holidays. We're going to want to go places. So that will go live in the next 2 or 3 days. And that's a search engine with visas, planes, trips, visits out. There's 7 or 8 different functions on there. And I learned how to do that on YouTube. This is how pivoting was, you know, the way to go. I sat for 50 hours on YouTube and didn't sleep for 4 days and drank lots of coffee, designed it and sent it to a developer. So it will be ready in a few days. So this is how your businesses can pivot as well.
Well done. Well done to you. Are you going to advertise hotels on there as well? Or
there's lots of different functions on there. It's a bit like Go Compare, but for the travel industry. Anything that you can think of is on there, from cruises to villas to booking a hotel. I'll send you the link when it's done.
Thank you.
Clicking link to you on LinkedIn.
Our experience as a business is we're very lucky that we are a management company that are the biggest independent one in the UK that look after care and hospitals. And I noticed that you look after St. Bart's on your website. I've been on your website while you were chatting earlier, Gunnar. And we look after St. Bart's with all their food online.
Okay.
So we've been really lucky that our business has actually been busy, but we also do hotels. And what we've done to replace that is we've opened the PPE part of the business. We've done PPE products before, but only in a small way. but actually we've now turned our office that used to house 65 people. The bottom floor is like a warehouse now, and we're having deliveries into my office, and myself and my wife are the only people going in, and I'm picking and packing orders and sending them out. And we're mainly selling to other businesses that are food businesses for masks for their drivers to wear, and care homes that can't get products quick enough via the government. And we're finding we can get the product where other people are moaning they can't get the product because of our relationship with the suppliers over the years. And we're also making sure that we hold our customers' money in the bank until the supplier delivers to us. Because one of the biggest problems with PPE is everyone is putting it out there that they can get your masks, gowns, whatever you need. You pay them, and it doesn't turn up for months or weeks really. We've had that situation with clients. So what we've been doing is acting as the middleman as well, holding the client's money and not paying the supplier until the product arrives physically in our office. We check it against the accreditations, and only when it checks against the accreditations do we pay the supplier. And that's worked really well for us. And charged a small fee in the middle to make up for me going in and picking and packing. But we've managed and sold over 1 million masks in 7 weeks, plus aprons, plus gloves. And we're just putting a tender out there at the moment for one of our clients who wants 500,000 masks a month for their staff when they come back, because they've got a lot of business in London, in inner cities, and they believe their staff will feel safer by wearing a mask to work on the underground or public transport. So we just put a tender for that out to 2 or 3 businesses. So yeah, it's challenging times for us all. And we've just opened a new site for local suppliers called One Fresh, where local suppliers can put all their goods on, and it's got your credit card, your delivery days, and everything is automated on it. So yeah, we're all, I think any business that's worth its salt is getting their act together and making sure they have a way of maintaining their business and growing it if they can. I think we're going to come out a stronger business. We've not furloughed anyone, so all the 65 people are still working from home, which was a big feat, getting everyone to have 2 screens, because everyone in our office has 2 screens. So everyone, 65 people have got 2 screens, either on the dinner table or in the dining room or the kitchen or somewhere around Manchester.
Good for you, Paul. Really good to hear that. You've obviously pivoted the business and used technology to help maintain the business. Adam, have you got a question for us? Thank you, Paul, for that, by the way. Really appreciate it.
Yes, thanks, guys. It's I suppose it's a bit for everyone, really, touching on some of the comments that have been made and some of the questions. Beyond the sort of technical solution to getting people set up at home, making sure that they can access everything and, being able to communicate, where have you seen the challenges in terms of keeping people's mentality? Tracy, you touched on the people struggling with their partners at home or their kids at home, or even if they're on their own. There's a well-being issue with everyone, I think, with working from home. So I'd be interested to learn a bit more about how people are planning the challenge, if they're thinking this is going to be long-term. I think beyond whatever's announced on Sunday, in my head, I think we're not going to have normality back for a very long time going into next year. So it'd be interesting to know how people are planning for things like that, so that the challenge of not just a technical solution for communication, but also for like well-being, development, and looking after people.
Yeah, so we have maybe if I start, so like I mentioned before, we have about 100,000 in Europe, and in Britain we have just under 9,000 staff. The first obviously was to help. We had this to a certain extent, to get the connectivity up. I mean, like you said, it's obvious, it's the technology side. But what really kind of was an interesting challenge was, there's a difference if you collaborate. The same here is a difference if we are virtually versus face to face. And there are certain skills or techniques that you need to still be able to be efficient and impactful when you are presenting or communicating or negotiating over video. So we had to really focus on, we could say training, but also real upskilling of all the stuff, right up, regardless who you were, from the entrance to the senior execs, they all had to kind of, refresh their capabilities. Some had, and some hadn't learned new. The second, and this is a really important thing you just mentioned, the second was really kind of the psychological aspect of it. It's pretty tough for all of us to certainly be locked in, particularly in an industry where, I look back, I've been in Manchester for 20 years. I think the last time I slept in my bed for more than 10 consecutive days was when my youngest, he's 17, was born. I've been traveling. It's part of my role, it's a part of my job, it's also part of me. I've always been traveling. So for me now, certainly being at home, this is now week 9. So I've kind of stopped traveling 9-10 weeks ago when I saw this happening, or saw this appearing. It's really tough. And so it's tough for everybody else. So we had to really kind of focus on supporting our staff, our workforce, and everybody has different situations. You have children at home. You have to do homeschooling. You maybe your partner works in the NHS, so you may be self-isolating in the garage. We have one staff who does that. So he's been self-isolating for a period of time, and you need to understand that. So you need to the impact really for corporations, for large ones, or the one I'm working for, is you have to go even closer to your employees, which can be quite sometimes a bit difficult as well, because of course it was never really that way in the past. So supportability of our staff was kind of the second focus. And then you're right, nobody has a crystal ball, but personally I doubt there will be significant changes on Sunday announced, maybe a couple of improvements, but we live with COVID-19 until we have something against it, which may not be until 2021, somewhere in the early 2021. So it's certainly something you need to plan much more longer than just a couple of weeks.
Definitely. Thanks very much. I'm also based in Altrincham, by the way, and my CTO is in Sale, so we'll just
okay.
actually in person when we can.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. Yeah, so it's a good objective to have. Go to the Slag and Lattice or the Axentuglever or whatever they're called.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for that, Adam. Really appreciate it. I think that's a really important point, actually, to talk about how companies are going to bring people back into their business. I was speaking to a travel company the other day based in Glasgow, and they were having to completely redesign their offices to cope with 2 meters between workers and all the other challenges. But I guess that's different for different sizes of businesses. Tracy, do you want to give us a bit of your opinion on how we bring people back into our business and how we sort of cope with is the working from home going to be the norm now?
I believe it is. I think we're going to have to do it in phases. It's that business planning. It's making sure that you have everything in place before you do start to bring people in. And that initial plan that I talked about of what the impact is, it's making sure that you can service your key processes and the critical things that keep your business online or keep your business working first. And you plan to bring those people in initially to make sure that you have that critical functions that you're still able to work with. And it will have to be very carefully managed. It will be around understanding what the government is asking of us so that we can all comply, and making sure that where those constraints and bottlenecks are, potentially around travel or around still having children who may be asked to go into school on alternate days because they've got to socially distance as well, you'll have to fit around all of that. So as we find out more, the plans can start to take shape. But at the moment, we don't have enough to have full planning in place to bring the workforce back in yet.
I think summarising everything and summing everything up. First of all, let me thank Tracy and Gunnar for being our chairs and our contributors today. I really appreciate it. I think the key thing for me is collaboration. I think that people having a more of an understanding view of the world Gunnar, you touched on delivery of just parcels every day. I know I've certainly felt that. You know, you order something on Amazon and you're okay with it being 3 weeks delivery time, just as long as you get it. I've just ordered a table and chair so I can, you know, get off this kitchen bench and give my back a break. But I know it's going to be 2 weeks before I get it. And I'm like, okay, it's going to happen when it's going to happen. And that's really nice to see. I just kind of hope that this new normal kind of does continue a little bit, really. I don't want to go back to what we had before. We can have the good bits maybe, but we'll see. And I think a lot of companies are playing it by ear. They're taking their plans one day at a time. And I've seen that companies are making decisions far quicker than they were before, and actually just going with things. And that seems to be a common thread from what we hear from a lot of people. I'm conscious that we're coming up to an hour now, and I really do thank everybody for joining us. And thank you for your patience. I really appreciate it. It's the first time we've done a virtual roundtable. I've hosted quite a few of these things in the real world. And it's quite interesting. I can see everyone's face. I can see the whites of everyone's eyes and their reactions. And it's been quite interesting. Thank you, Gunnar. Thank you, Tracy. I'll just leave you with this extra bit of information. Obviously, we're going to share these slides with you. And Tracy's going to be good enough to put her notes together for me. And I'm going to put them into a document. We're going to brand it up and send it out there, because we're conscious that there's a lot of these roundtable events that kind of go along, people talk, and then that's it. We want you to take something away, and we want you to really put something, even if it's just one thing, into your business that you've learned today. We'd also love your feedback. We're going to share some stuff on LinkedIn. And if it's okay with people, we'll tag a few people that attended. And we'd love you to talk about the roundtable and what you got from it. And obviously, if there are new strategies that you're going to be putting into your business and you do need some extra help, some expertise, we do have people in our stable that we're working with right now. A couple of the people that are on the call today are actually people that we're going to try and help find their next opportunity. So yes, please, let's keep this open. Let's keep the communication open, and let's not let this just be the end of it. There will be some follow-up. We will stay in touch with you, and there might be a second roundtable event in the next weeks or months. But please, thank you for all joining us. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Gunnar. Has anybody else got any last questions they want to put to the floor, or are we okay to finish as we are right now? Great stuff. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. I have been recording partway through, so I'll share that with you. And we'll also share follow-up material, the notes from Tracy, and also those links from Gunnar. So thank you very much indeed, everyone.
Thank
and
you.
we'll see you soon.
Take care.
Thank you.
Ta-ra.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.